You know, if the 3D Sonic games are known for anything, it's the inconsistency that the games have. None of these games stick to one formula, and even when you expect them to, it still doesn't. Oh, everyone likes Sonic Adventure 2 and wants a follow-up to that gameplay? Guess what? Sonic Heroes. Wow, you guys must have really loved Sonic Generations. Guess what? Sonic Lost World. It's not really a secret anymore, but Sega tends to switch up the formula for the 3D Sonic games quite frequently. We don't know why, and we probably will never get an answer as to why. However, there is one Sonic formula that managed to remain relevant for even as recent as Sonic Frontiers. I am, of course, talking about the Boost formula. A formula that started with Sonic Rush and is still being used to the latest release today, which definitively places it as the most used gameplay style in the Sonic franchise. I think 2D might have been used more, but for this video we're specifically talking about the 3D games. So with that said, it seems that Sega has finally found a formula for the 3D Sonic games that works, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because the Boost formula is far from perfect. And I've talked about my issues with the Boost formula in the past, but in this video I really want to dive in and talk about the growing issues that are happening with this formula of gameplay. While also, you know, like providing some suggestions and some solutions. I'm not a total jerk. I know that Morio Kishimoto has been responding to a lot of criticism recently, which, side note, that's actually really cool, thank you. But if anything at all, I just want this video to serve the purpose of informing people of why so many are dissatisfied with the current day use of the Boost formula. Because if you just joined in or came back to the Sonic franchise through Sonic Frontiers or Sonic Forces, you may not know why so many people used to love and adore this style of gameplay. And if you wish to understand, we have to go all of the way back to the beginning, with Sonic Rush. Believe it or not, Sonic Rush is one of the Sonic games that people tend to overlook when looking back at the Dark Age games. Like, sure, you had some disappointing releases, oftentimes multiple in a row. However, on the 2D handheld side of things, Sonic was still a thriving platformer that released bangers consistently. And the reason why isn't because Sonic was 2D, but rather because of a new formula that these games had. The Boost formula. In Sonic Rush, instead of going fast through the use of momentum, you instead gain speed through the boost button, a mechanic that can essentially grant you top speed within a millisecond of activating it. Theoretically, this sounds like a terrible idea because one of the coolest things about the Genesis Sonic games was the fact that you had to gain speed through momentum. Back in the 90s, playing around and earning speed through the geometry of the levels was unheard of, and it was very addicting. But despite all that, Sonic Rush was still a certified banger, ladies and gentlemen, hands down. You can preach your Sonic morals all you want about how momentum is the only true way to play Sonic, but at some point, you gotta admit that Sonic Rush was a banger. But why is it a certified banger? What made the formula work? Well, for one, you can go fast. And everyone loves to go fast, especially in Sonic games. But then there's a wrench thrown into the mix. Sure, Sonic can go max speed at a push of a button. However, there seems to be a lot of obstacles in Sonic's way. There's a lot of inconvenient level design placements all over the place as constantly putting Sonic to a stop. You'll also notice that you cannot get an S rank on your first try no matter how hard you work to get it. It's not happening. Okay, now this may rub some people the wrong way at first, because there's a lot of people who only play Sonic games for the sole factor of going fast. So if they are constantly getting slowed down in the levels and they can't even get S ranks, then they tend to fall out of interest. But those guys suck, alright? They're not real Sonic fans like yours truly, me. The main point I'm trying to make here is that the first impression is usually not great, but typically, when you replay the level, that's when everything clicks. You see, with the classic Sonic games, the skill ceiling relies on the player's ability to anticipate upcoming obstacles and act accordingly. You know, things like rolling downhill to avoid taking hit from an enemy or just jumping to avoid a hazard. With Sonic Rush, it's different. In this game, the skill ceiling is based on the player's ability to memorize the level design and act upon it in a swift manner. The game essentially wants you to keep replaying the level until you memorize all of the obstacles and all of the pathways, thus allowing you to play through the level without any interruptions. And if you're able to do that, you will receive an S rank. Again, it may sound like a really bad idea on paper for a game to want you to replay these levels until you can flawlessly beat it, but in execution, it's really addicting. And that's because it is so satisfying when the boost formula encourages the players to master every little section of a level until the player is quite legitimately close to flawless. You may not even realize it, but you are basically a speedrunner when you play Sonic games with a boost. It's actually brilliant. But before we move on, I wanted to recap what we've talked about with Sonic Rush and the standard it set for the boosting gameplay. First off, clearly the formula worked because Sonic fans loved it and the critics loved it. And because I love it. And everyone knows that my opinion matters most. Regardless, people love Sonic Rush. So I think it should provide the blueprint on how to make a good Sonic boosting game. So here's what I believe are the 3 main key factors that makes a boosting gameplay good. Number 1, level design. If the level design isn't constantly punishing the player, then it will cause levels to become boring. And when I say punishing level design, I'm not necessarily talking about a spike or a death pit. By that, I essentially mean anything that slows Sonic down. That is what I consider to be punishing. If the level design doesn't have enough obstacles to memorize and dodge, then it completely destroys the replayability philosophy that made the formula so addicting in the first place. So that is definitely important. Number 2, the ranking system. The ranking system needs to be challenging. To give players a strong enough incentive to keep replaying the level, it needs to be hard to obtain an S rank. An S rank is basically validating the player for their skill, so if you obtain S ranks too easily, it'll create a problem where players don't feel compelled enough to really master a boosting stage. I mean, why should you if the game is already telling you that you are perfect at the game? This doesn't necessarily destroy the replayability aspect, but it greatly lowers it. It could potentially take away hours upon hours that players could be putting into well-designed levels. And that, in my opinion, is not a good thing. Number 3, controls. Yeah, this one seems like it's a given. Like, obviously you want a platformer to have good controls, but you'd be surprised. If you do not have full control over Sonic and you're struggling to turn or struggling to perform a multitude of actions, then it's going to create a very frustrating experience for the player, especially with the boosting gameplay. Like I've mentioned before, with the boost, you're supposed to be reacting to upcoming obstacles very swiftly. Sometimes the reaction windows for these stunts are really small, so if the controls suck, then you will struggle with the game, and not in a good way, trust me. So I feel that these 3 factors that I just listed can generally make or break any boosting Sonic game. And now that we've established all that, let's take a look at some boosting Sonic games and rate them out of 3 based on how faithful they are to the boost formula. First, let's take a look at personally one of my favorites, and that is Sonic Unleashed. When it comes to this game, I believe it is a perfect translation of the Sonic Rush gameplay into 3D. You can have whatever opinion about the Werehog, you can say it sucks, I don't really care. But Sonic Unleashed's boosting gameplay hits the nail on everything that makes the formula great. Good punishing level design, this game has it. Hard to obtain S ranks? Yes sir. Good controls, I don't even need to tell you. In fact, this game does something even better than all of that. With the main stages of Sonic Unleashed, they can be challenging to master, but they're not insanely hard. However, if you check out the side stages in Sonic Unleashed that are completely optional, you will find some of the toughest to master Sonic stages ever created. Getting your first S rank in some of these stages can take multiple hours at a time, especially if you're playing one of the Adventure Pack stages. Those can be brutal. So basically what happened here is that Sonic Unleashed took the challenging level design aspect, balanced it out for the main game, and then ramped it up for the side levels for those who really wanted a challenge. This is by far my favorite part of Sonic Unleashed and is probably the biggest reason why it's my favorite Sonic game of all time. There's just so much to master with this game, it's a speedrunner's paradise. But then you head into Sonic Colors, and this game is a bit different. It was released for the Wii and it kind of changed the boost formula in a strange way. In this game, instead of crafting the boosting gameplay around dodging obstacles and memorizing level design, it instead is crafted around maximizing your score through gimmicks, finding red rings, and platforming, which in all reality isn't that bad at all. I personally don't think it's as rewarding as Sonic Rush or Sonic Unleashed, but it's still fun regardless. But for this game, the level design doesn't represent what I think the boost gameplay should be. I still like the level design a lot. In fact, Sonic Colors is still one of my favorite Sonic games, except the level design here is good for different reasons than Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Rush. Thus, because of that fact, I do not believe it's faithful to the boost formula. On the other hand, when it comes to the ranking system and controls, I think Sonic Colors has it down. The ranking system isn't the hardest thing in the world, but most times you do have to replay the levels to know how to get an S rank in the first place. And then you have the controls. I think Sonic Colors controls fantastically, and I don't think I really have to say much here. Nothing about Sonic is actively working against me. I feel like I'm in control at all times. Overall, I believe Sonic Colors is a 2 out of 3 when it comes to faithfulness to the boost formula. It's not necessarily bad yet because Sonic Colors is still a great game. However, it's starting to lose some of the aspects that made the formula so fun. Then next up we have Sonic Generations, and I believe this game is closer to the ideal boosting Sonic game when compared to Sonic Colors. First off, the level design of this game is once again focused on memorization and dodging obstacles just like Sonic Rush and Sonic Unleashed. It is a bit easier than those games, but I don't really see that as an issue. For example, if you take Sonic Rush Adventure, which is the sequel to Sonic Rush, that game's level design is significantly easier than Sonic Rush's level design. In Sonic Rush, there's a ton of death pits, spikes, and crushing blocks that are just waiting to destroy Sonic. In Rush Adventure, those aspects are greatly toned down. In fact, believe it or not, when playing this game for the video, I might have fallen down like one death pit. It's actually pretty rare in that game. So really, I don't see an issue with Sonic Generations level design being easier than Sonic Unleashes. Personally, I prefer the more difficult level design, but I like this too. However, Sonic Generations just drops the ball with the ranking system. This has got to be one of the easiest ranking systems of all time, and this goes beyond Sonic. You can quite legitimately be garbage at this game, and as long as you don't die in the level, you will get an S rank. I am not joking, I swear, I will play this game with my toes and I will get an S rank on every single level. I should not be confident in the fact that I can do that, but I am. The problem with this is that you barely have to try in these levels, so there's no incentive for mastering any of these. I mean, the level design is still good, so some people will still try to learn these levels, but nobody is being incentivized to really master every section of the stage. So that's kind of annoying, but alright. As for the controls, I believe Sonic Generations has that down, so this game is once again getting another 2 out of 3 in terms of faithfulness. Now, something that is very apparent is that the boosting formula is slowly deteriorating, but it's not bad. Alright, it's not bad. Except, I don't think anyone saw what was coming next, because the next iteration of the boost formula was a massive nosedive in quality. There's no need to keep it a secret, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Sonic Forces. Sonic Forces released in 2017. It was the next mainline Sonic game after Sonic Lost World, and everyone was very excited to know that the boost formula was finally returning to the Sonic franchise. Except the return was not good at all. You see, the boost formula always had a small but somewhat vocal part of the community who did not like it. There were people who didn't like how automated the formula was, or how linear it was, or how the boost mechanic essentially rewarded players too easily. The most common phrase used by these people was, "Hold X for boost to win." Now, if you've played Sonic Unleashed, Colors, or Generations, you would know that all of those critiques are almost completely wrong. These games are not boost to win. If you only hold X, you will die or you just won't be able to progress. That is not true. And it's not overly automated. Sure, there is some automation, but it's not to an obsessive degree. So, in reality, those critiques were just cries from a small group of people who were dissatisfied with the direction of the series. But with Sonic Forces, all of those critiques of the boost formula became true. Just to get this right off the bat, Sonic Forces is a 0 out of 3 in terms of faithfulness to the boost formula, and I am about to tear into it. Starting off with the level design, it is a straight line. There's very few obstacles in any of these levels, and when there are, you can see them from a mile away because of how empty the level design is. There's nothing fast to react to, no cool branching pathways that gets you a great advantage. I mean, I take that back. There are other pathways, but those are straight lines too, and they don't really do much, so I don't care about those. And to top it all off, everything is automated. Even the turning is automated. The turning! They automated something that you should easily be able to do by drifting or holding the analog stick towards the left or right. The level design in this game is a complete shell of what it once was, and it is literally the one thing that people did not want boosting games to be. Hold X to win. That is Sonic Forces. Oh, but maybe the ranking system. No, that one sucks too. The ranking system is slightly better than Generations, but not by much. You pretty much have no incentive to speedrun these stages from both a level design standpoint and a ranking system standpoint. Okay, maybe controls. No. Again, no. Sonic controls like straight booty in this game. His jumps are slippery, so good luck platforming, and the worst of it, he can't turn. You may not need to turn that much in this game because, you know, it's a straight line. However, when you can turn, it is dang near impossible to do it. In fact, here's a section of the first stage in the game where there's a branching pathway. I am holding right here, but it's not working. In retrospect, and I really hate to say this because I know a lot of people like to defend Sonic Forces, but this was the game that killed the spirit of the boost formula for me. Because from then on after this game, it never recovered. Which is where we get into the next iteration of the boost formula, being in the new release of Sonic Frontiers. The twist for this game is that it's actually pretty good. It just didn't get everything right. Alright, so when it comes to this game, I do not think that the boost principles should be applied to the open zone section of the game. In the open zone, you can boost, but you're not really playing a boosting level, so I don't really consider it along the same vein of the other boosting games. It's kind of like its own thing. I wouldn't ever consider this game as a solely boosting Sonic game. However, when it comes to the cyberspace feature of the game, which includes many boosting stages, that's where my critiques come in. Here's the thing. Cyberspace isn't always bad. There's actually a few stages that I genuinely do like. It is a massive step up from Sonic Forces, and I cannot stress that enough. But it's still very out of touch with the formula, especially when compared to the Sonic Rush games and Sonic Unleashed. It really pains me to say this, but Sonic Frontiers is another 0 out of 3. It may be fun in its own way, kind of like how Sonic Colors was despite that game deviating from the boost formula, but this is still far from perfect, and I hate that I have to say that. Level design. It is a mixed bag. A lot of times, there's some pretty cool level design due to the game borrowing some levels from previous Sonic games. But when it borrows that level design, it strips it down from all of its memorization and fast reactionary obstacles. It's not a straight line like Sonic Forces, you're still doing things within the level, except it's more focused on being a platforming obstacle course rather than an actual boosting level. And again, that creates a similar situation to Sonic Colors where it deviates away from the formula, but you can still kinda have fun with it. Except I feel like when you do that with the boost formula, you're kind of restricting the gameplay from its fullest potential, which is exactly what cyberspace is. The boost formula being used, but nowhere near the best it can be. Then you have the ranking system, which is once again really easy. There is one exception being the second cyberspace level in the game, and wouldn't you know it, it's a fan favorite level. Probably because while playing, knowing that you had to complete the level under such a strict time limit, people had to get creative and learn the magnet dash to be able to do it. So in a way, you actually had to memorize this level, and I had a lot of fun doing that. Just like how everyone else did. It was a fun level. You know, it's almost as if people like fast reactionary platforming in a Sonic game. Like, it is insane how this world works. There's a bit more I have to say about magnet dashing, but let's talk about controls first. The controls are not that good once again. It's better than Sonic Forces, except that's a low bar and I don't really care about that point. It's hard to turn with Sonic again, and there's just no fluidity with Sonic's movements. Like, Sonic just loses all momentum when he jumps, and that is so weird. Then you have the issue of Sonic moving too slow for a boosting level. Boosting Sonic games are supposed to fill you with adrenaline and make you move really fast so that you have to react quickly to obstacles up ahead. But in Sonic Frontiers, you can see all of the obstacles, and since Sonic isn't super fast, you have a lot of time to prepare yourself for the punishing level design, which kinda defeats the purpose of the boost once again. And that's kind of the problem with the modern day use of the boost. Like, it's slowly become less and less recognizable to what it once was. Something I want to talk about before I end this is that the biggest enjoyment that people have gotten out of Sonic Frontiers is through the magnet dashing glitch. And I'll admit, it's a cool glitch that you can perform, and it makes speedrunning these stages like 10 times more fun. Because in a lot of scenarios, you have to learn the level design to use it properly, and on top of that, you need to react fast to use it in a lot of situations. Of course people are going to like it. I just hope one day, if Sega continues pursuing the boosting gameplay, that they take a look back at these 4 games and learn what made them so special. Learn that the boost formula is best when it's having you master and practically speedrun these stages, and how you get rewarded afterwards with a beautiful S rank. The game doesn't need to be difficult like Sonic Unleashed, and it doesn't need to be 2D like Sonic Rush. I just wish we could get another boost game that followed the philosophy that Sonic Rush started. There's a lot of I wish statements here, and I don't expect us to get another boost game at the quality of Sonic Unleashed's day stages or anything like that. I don't even think the previous developers who made those games possible are even around anymore as far as I can tell. Just please, Sega, if you're going to bring back a feature like cyberspace or make another boosting Sonic game, do it right. If you can't do it right, then I'm not going to care about it. Just like how I don't care about cyberspace. And with that said, I think I got my thoughts out about this subject. I just hope that we see a better return for the boost in the future. Or, you could just bring back momentum. I do miss Sonic Adventure. And now I should probably leave now that I just said momentum, so peace out, guys. My chill members are Ethan K78, Snack Pigeon, Snicks, ArchXYZ, Bananas, JaneXV, Jenny and Ring, SonicMan715, Sonic Hub, Thomas Winry, Chip Chap Chop, The Squeaker Nerd, Super Shax Boom, Sonic Extreme, and Super Saiyan Sonic. Thank you all for supporting my channel. Hope you liked today's video. Make sure to click one of the in-card screen videos here. I love you guys. I'll see you soon. Peace out.